Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, I'm going to jump right into this one today. I was buried alive and left for dead. I grew up in a small town, was well liked by everyone. I played sports, had good grades, and no issues with law enforcement. Everything was great, until after I graduated, that is. I was 18 when it happened, and I wasn't charged with the crime, but I was looked at like a murderer because I was the last one seen with the missing Williams boy. They were a bigger family in the little city of Stanford. Seth Williams was the youngest of the four brothers, the same age as I, and was a great friend of mine. We went camping in the mountains after graduation. A group of 4 of us, and 3 only made it back. From what I could recall, because of the heavy drinking, is we all had turned in for the night, and when we had woken up, Seth was gone. We all believed he just went home early, or something like that. We weren't ever thinking anything of it, until a few days passed, and then a missing persons report was filed. A search and rescue team had combed the mountains for 5 days, covering from our campsite a 30-mile radius all around, and Seth was never discovered. The family had all blamed me and hated me for it. So much so, I felt like my life was threatened. So I had made arrangements to move out of town. As I was attending college 300 miles away, the Williams boys had made threats, and they were not the family to mess with, as they have been known to make people disappear themselves. Soon college started, and just like that, I graduated after 4 years, majoring in business management. Things were going well until I'd received a phone call that my mother was dying back in Stanford. She was at the hospital, so I decided it was time to head back to the hometown. I was 23 now and felt things should have settled down by now about the whole Seth thing. I got into town. It was a Friday night. I seen Mom, and she told me I should go catch up with some old friends that I haven't seen in over 4 years. So I decided to go to the old Rusty Spoon. It was a local bar and restaurant where all the people of Stanford had gathered to drink and be merry. I went in and ordered my favorite drink, Scotch on the rocks. I didn't recognize anyone, so I sat by myself, and 2 became 3, and 3 soon became 5. It was now 11 p.m. by this time, and I was feeling pretty buzzed up. So I decided it was time to pay my bill and head for home. As I was walking out, the 3 Williams boys, Ross, Jacob, and Nate, walked into the bar. I tried to go by unnoticed, but they recognized me right away. Ross said, "Where you off to there, bud? We just got here. We didn't know you was in town. Let us buy you one." I felt I didn't have a choice, and I accepted. I told them I had to head to the restroom first, and I'll be right back out. Little did I know, while I was in the restroom, the boys spiked my drink with GHB. I came back from the restroom and sat down with them. I had to get heading out soon, I said, so I drank the drink rather quickly. We started talking about the old high school days, and then about Seth, and they wouldn't let me leave. Soon enough, I started feeling super drunk and out of it. I couldn't even walk, I remember. And then I recall them saying, "Hey, we'll help you out." Then as we got outside, they started smashing me, hitting me with anything they could, to the point where I was unconscious. I had no idea what was going on. Then they loaded me up in their pickup, wrapped me in a blanket, as they had assumed I was dead. They took me out into the woods up by a creek and started digging a hole to put me in. I found this out later when I awoke in my buried alive shallow grave. They dumped my body in the hole and then they took off. I was finally coming to at this point, struggling to breathe with broken ribs, arm, and a bad leg. I was just a wreck. I couldn't die here is all I thought, so I mustered up all the strength I had and started clawing dirt away, reaching for the surface. Luckily, they didn't bury me that deep. Finally, after what seemed like a few hours, I was somewhat above ground. Struggling to move and in extreme pain, I crawled out of the grave and made my way toward the creek. I had to move quick, as I didn't know if they would come back to check. Overly exhausted from crawling out of that shallow grave into the creek, I passed out. I awoke early the next morning. I was cold, broken, and almost would have rather been dead. I wasn't too far from where they had thrown my body. I was still within sight, at least. I got up and hid right next to a tree as I seen a vehicle approaching. It was the boys checking to see if I was still buried, and dead, I assumed. I started hobbling up the creek slowly but surely as I heard one of the Williams boys yell out, "Hey, he's gone! He's not in the grave! What are we gonna do?" Then another one shouted, "What? No way, we gotta find him and finish this." I was terrified at this point, unarmed and halfway dead already, but to my luck they thought I was already on foot headed back towards town. So they got back in the truck and headed in the direction back towards town. I was headed the opposite way. It was a struggle making my way up the creek, but I had a positive thought of knowing that there was a general store a few miles up following the creek. There I could grab some food, supplies, and whatever else I would need and come up with a plan. It took me a full day to go maybe 2 miles, and then I had to rest again. When I awoke the next morning, I made a sling out of my shirt and tree branches. I was still a hurting unit, but I felt way better than I did the day before. The plan was just to keep following the creek and reach the general store before nightfall. I made my way to the highway, and right across it was the general store. I had to be sure as shit I wouldn't get seen crossing the highway, as I knew the boys were in a manhunt looking to finish me off. The coast was clear, so I made a break for it. Hurrying across the road, I wasn't seen. In fact, there were no customers at the store, so I was in luck. I had only $10 to my name that was in my sock, as they had grabbed my wallet to destroy the evidence, I assumed. I entered the store, seen the clerk head into the back room immediately, and he was on the phone. I bought all the water and the bandages and what little food I could for $10. I got to the counter, and the clerk was an older gentleman. He was acting strange. He asked, "Hey, what happened?" Trying to stall me, it seemed like. I told him I had to hurry up and I had to go. He then smirked as he held up a pistol and said, "You ain't going anywhere. The boys are on their way now. I know exactly who you are." I was shocked that they had a whole posse already out trying to find me before the sheriff did. I was hurt bad, but the clerk was old and I had to think fast, so I used my good arm and knocked the pistol out of his hand, and I picked it up before he could react, and I shot and killed the bastard right behind the counter. I gathered more supplies quickly as I made my way for the exit. I hurried then across the road back into the trees to hide. I hunched down in an old culvert by the creek out of view. I could hear vehicles then screeching into the parking lot across the road. It was the Williams boys. After what they had discovered of the clerk, they must have thought I was long gone again, as they quickly left screeching tires flying up the road towards town. I was safe for the moment. I decided to stay where I was for the night. Now equipped with a gun and food and water, I finally felt somewhat alive again, like I had a chance to make it out of this. As the sun rose of the next day, I had a new goal in mind, and it was to kill them before they could me. So I hurried along the tree line towards town and towards the Williams Ranch. They probably had several people everywhere keeping an eye out for me, so I had to be on my toes at all times. They would never think that I would be hunting them, and that I would probably be running for my life. At this point, all I had was revenge on my mind, as I was innocent in the whole Seth thing, and I had already killed an old store clerk who had sided with the boys. Still in agonizing pain at this point, I made it to the outskirts of the Williams property, thinking on how I would plan my attack. I decided to set up camp in the woods, remaining out of sight. I felt it was me against the whole town at this point. I got up early at 5 a.m. The Williams truck was out front and the property was quiet. So I prepared some Molotov cocktails to burn them out. I had to get them and be done with it. So I snuck around to the rear side of the ranch-style house, and I lit both of the cocktails and chucked them right through the windows. It was a perfect shot, as the whole house went up in flames in no time. I heard shouting and screaming from the inside as they were trying to put out the fire. I crouched down by the garage, waiting for them to exit one by one. First was Ross. He was on fire trying to put himself out. Oh my God! Oh Jesus, help me! I aimed my pistol and shot twice, hitting him in the chest and the head. Then the other two came out quick in a panic, and I unloaded the rest of the rounds. Another 6 shots, 3 into each of them. Jacob was dead, and Nate was lying there coughing up blood, trying to hold on. As I approached him, feeling no remorse at all, I finished him off with a large rock, slamming it into the side of his head, crushing him. I was so relieved I had won, but I sensed this all was far from over, and I knew I was going to jail for murder now. But would anyone believe that they brought this upon themselves by trying to bury me alive, thinking that I was already dead? I'm finishing up writing this at my mother's house, where I've been hiding out the past couple weeks. I'm still in pretty bad shape, but I'm getting better daily. I don't want to turn myself in until I'm completely healed. Does anyone have any ideas of what I can do or what I should do?